be happening. So
Yes,
far
we're
so
live
good.
on Twitch.
All right. We look. What is happening with the Twitch situation?
On my end, it shows that we're playing.
Yeah, but if I do this, does it look better? Yeah, kind of. There we go. Dun, 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 dun.
What?
Okay. So all right. And then does it tell me? Oh, look at that. So we are successfully streaming on all 3 platforms. Facebook, Twitch, and on YouTube. So, hey to everybody. And it is successfully 6 o'clock. We are missing one person, but that's fine. She's doing some last minute drafts of the story she would like to do. Mag, it's a friend of mine. It's Abigale, who is different than Annabelle. And you are muted currently. But I am gonna start the show. So, right off the top, hello to everyone who's watching, and this is the workshop show. And what we do is I do a 20-minute lesson at the top real quick, and then we break down into stories, and we have 2 people tell stories, and we'll give them feedback, and they'll have a chance to immediately iterate on their story and try to bolster it and have it be a better telling in the next one. And you'll get to see them and their creative process happening in real time. And then at the end of the show, we wrap the whole thing up by having one of the people who didn't tell a story tell one of the stories that they heard as though they themselves had lived it. And what that does, this whole thing, is to simulate sort of the the kind of process that you go through when you are working on stories on your own at home, when you're going to workshops. And it also, at the end, by having someone else do it, it creates a lot of empathy, and it also feels validating to hear someone tell your story, like sort of exactly as you were telling it. But in terms of audience, what happens is that you get to see in a really concrete fashion what the power of voice. because these are the same stories told by two different voices. The stories remain virtually the same, and the only thing that changes is that voice. There are a lot of common things that can trip people up in storytelling. Show versus tell can be very difficult for people. Structure, plot, theme. But I think one of the most sort of obtuse ones that is hard to see concretely is this idea of voice in stories. And that's why we have the show that we have. And so, without further ado, I'm going to kick into today's lesson. And this is just a very basic talk about the stages you go through when you are creating a story. Now, I'm going to do a shout out. Somebody's going to help me with this. It's very similar to the way the stages of grief works. Does anybody know who came up with the stages of grief?
Helen Kubler-Ross. What's her first name?
Yeah. Kubler-Ross came up with these. I think it's 7 stages of grief. And there's sort of a normal cycle, 1 through 7, you go through. But not everybody goes through them in order. Not everybody hits them all. And you'll go back to them. And you'll go back to them over time, especially at like deep losses, right? Sometimes you'll go back and you'll be like, I thought I was over that sort of deep sadness, but it's been a year and whatever the day hit and I needed a deep cry. I needed to go through it again. Very similar with storytelling. Hopefully not too many deep cryings, but you'll be telling a story and something will hit you. And you'll be like, I need to go back to this specific thing. So in that terms of why you go back and things like that, the very first thing that I'm going to talk about is this idea of stories have plasticity. In a early pre-episode, we did the whole talk about the storytelling triangle and why that's important. And part of that is with the sort of storytelling that we do, this moth style that's off, sort of impromptu, off the top of your head. You've rehearsed it, but you just know it. You are getting immediate feedback from the crowd and their oohs and ahs, or their leans in, or their lean backs. You are vibing off of that, and your story changes in that moment. If they're laughing long, you give them a longer pause, or you can make a choice and be like, I'm going to cut that off and move on with my story. But you're making those choices based on what you see and what serves the story in real time. That plasticity, another way to say it, I was in a workshop with this woman, Lily B., and she runs these stoop style stories. And she likes to say, one story can be a million different stories. And you can put a million stories into one story. In the story luck sort of purview, in the language that we tend to use, is there's a million frames, right? You get to choose how you frame your story. And the more tools you have about your story, the better control you have of your own narratives. And that's a helpful thing. But the fact that that exists is why these stories, we can talk about them in the metaphor of that they're living, breathing things. They change from telling to telling. And so compartmentalized, here are the sort of 4 steps that I have. And we can talk about if other people see other ones and what they feel about it. But the first one is you live it. And if slight amendment, you either live it or you find it. There are times when you have an experience and you're like, oh, I can't wait to tell my best friend about this. And that's the first point where you're like, oh, this is a story. This is a little bit. And that is something that you can develop yourself. Notice when you're saying it and think about, what is it about this moment that makes it story worthy? In terms of writing, one of the things to think about, and this was big in Jonathan Franzen's book about his writing life, was just this idea that the writers he knew who were really good were constantly being quiet. I think the book was all even titled like How to Be Alone, because it's about observing. And so what they're doing in that observation is they're constantly wondering, how would I describe this in words? Thinking about like how do I describe the pen? How do I describe the subway that I'm on? How would I paint this picture in words? The storyteller, you sort of train yourself to do the very same thing. How would I tell this to someone? Would I be boisterous? Would I pull it back? And what details are important to make this scene vivid? And you sort of concretely ask yourself those questions as you train this like storytelling ear, this storytelling eye. And that's what's happening when you live it. And I'll throw out another name. There's a dude, Matthew Dix, who has a storytelling podcast where he goes through and critiques stories that other people have done. I like this, I didn't like that, and things of that nature. And he talks about developing this storytelling eye. And instead of the idea of living it, he's big into more define the story. And he's like, every night before you go to bed, go over your day and think, what was the most story-worthy thing that I did today? And just do a quick jot it down. And sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 things, and sometimes you'll have 1. But just that repetitive thinking about, what's the cool story that I could tell tomorrow about today, trains this sense of how to tell a story and how to find it. And they'll start coming more and more often as you're living them, if that doesn't happen for you already. So number 2 is basically the first thing you do. Once you have it, the next thing you do is you just tell it to yourself. And sometimes it's bare bones, and sometimes you go through it, and sometimes you think about that incident in the parking lot over and over again. Your boss was mean to you at work, and you're like, oh, I'm so grumpy about this. And you sort of ruminate on it, and you go over it. But that's part of the storytelling process, you telling it to yourself. Third, you tell it to a friend. Call somebody up. Tell it to them. And at each step, it becomes more real and more refined, and you're building and figuring out what the theme is and the frame. You don't necessarily have it at the top. These things can emerge as you're talking. Back to the telling it to yourself. One of the things about telling it to yourself that's good to note is that this is, in my opinion, the best place to play with it. And to play with it is this idea of make it big and see how it feels. Make it small, see how it feels. Use different voices. Push yourself to flip the script. What if I'm seeing this all wrong? What if my boss was really nice? See how that contrast is. See if you can create, what's the light in this story? What's the dark in this story? How do I ratchet them up? And what is the difference? And so we're going to play around with that with ourselves in like exercises. So 3 was tell your friends. 4 I'm going to put on is workshop it. Once you have workshopping, to my mind, can be stuff like this. Come to this show, hang out with us, go to an open mic. But it can also be a deeper level of this tell a friend thing. Noah is big on this for me. He will help me workshop stories. When I tell him, it's different than when I call somebody up. I got this cool thing to tell you, right? I will call him and be like, I've got a story to tell you that I'm working on for a show or for the workshop show or for a solo thing. And he'll listen to it with that writerly ear. And our conversation isn't going to be, that's a crazy thing that happened to you. The conversation is going to be, okay, what do you want to look at in an artistic way about this? And sometimes I'll come to him and I'll be like, oh, this transition, are you able to follow the leap in time? Should I go linear? Should I, whatever the thing is, the workshop is the next level of the story where you're really getting into the nitty-gritty, and that's where you're saying, this is my theme. I'm going to discover why I'm telling this story, why it's important for me to tell someone else. And again, you can go through these phases. You think you know what it is at the end of this workshop. You go up on stage and you tell the story, and somebody comes to you after the show and they say, that touched me because listen to this. And you're like, I never saw that theme. All of a sudden you're back to stage 1 and you're finding the story for the first time. All of these things you can go through time and time again. And it's just, when are you satisfied? And when do you end up getting surprised that, oh, I got to go back to this story? That's my basic lesson, but I want to do a little bit, put some people on the spot and do a little bit of the exercise of playing with it. And I'm going to start with Mac. And one of the things I thought about would be interesting is in one of the first shows, and you can go ahead and unmute yourself, that we did, you told a story about getting married and you jump into the water. And that's a cool moment, but I think it'd be a fun moment just for this exercise to play with. Like, what does that look like if you made that as big as possible?
Okay. So I guess what I'm thinking about is if do you want me to just talk about making it big, or do you want me to make it big?
However, yeah, I do want you to make it big, but I think we can talk about it before you do it too. Whether we talk about it before or after, you can surprise us and make it big, and then we can be like, what did he do?
No, okay. So I think part of it could be just what it felt like to be standing there completely dressed for this wedding with Darla next to me, with her completely dressed, and knowing that our signal to the minister or the justice of the peace was, if we jump in the water, that means we're committed to each other and marry us. Say those legal words, but if we don't. But there was I don't know how we came up with that, but it was this sort of dramatic tension, and it wasn't really resolved until we looked at each other, and she sort of gave me a nod, and I gave her a nod, and that meant we had decided to get married. And I grabbed her hand and we jumped in. That was like, holy crap, and then swam ashore.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that to me is sort of making that moment big, partly because we didn't know until that moment if we were just going to look at each other and I was going to untie the canoe and we were going to climb in and go back and have our big celebration, and everybody would have sort of thought we were married, but we weren't. We just had a party. So yeah.
So what I want to see happen, what I'm trying to push you to do here, though, is
Right.
I think that that was a good back and forth where we're talking about it. But in the telling, you could exaggerate this, right? You can get in that moment and show us the jump.
Yeah.
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 And so I'm just going to throw out ideas for you.
Sure.
In this. And it is an interesting thing, this idea of playing. I think it's something that I personally have trouble with. It, as much as I talk about this idea of framing and whatnot, my sense of self and my ego and all that has a very clear idea of what these stories are to me that I tell of myself. And telling them in an exaggerated way, even if I'm logically, I know that I'm doing this as an experiment just to see, feels kind of like a lie or scary. Like, oh, that's not how it happened, or that's not really how this story goes, because I've told it to myself. I've already done that part where I tell it to myself. So there's a big piece of this play that you got to figure out how to give yourself permission to do it. Shut the door, shut the people out. I'm putting Mac on the spot where there's all of us in the room, but it's play. Be silly. So for me to be silly, and then we jump, and then you can make the sound splash. How big does it go? Even me, I'm like pulling them back there. You can tell, right? So if I'm telling that story, there's a humor there that you can really pull out, and she doesn't know. Like, what does it look like in her eyes, and like, how do you mimic? And are we gonna do it? Yes. And you can even go off screen. You can do anything. And maybe that doesn't work with whatever, but just playing with it gives you a sense of where does the go. And I think going bigger, you want to cross the line in this place. It's an exaggerated cross the line, and then you're like, okay, it's somewhere around here. I can edge up to it. Can you give me a giant splash? All right.
So I looked at her. She looked at me. I grabbed her hand. I took a deep breath. I think she did too. We flung ourselves off the dock and into the water, and we went under, And I came up and I looked at her. It was like, blowing the water, and she was smiling and I was smiling. And then I saw all the people on the shore just could come for the wedding, just started to gather up, and we just began to swim in, just laughing and feeling incredibly silly.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now, I think, to me, there's a lot to use there, because you don't have in the other tellings that spitting out.
Right.
And that is a really good image. And you don't have and we're underwater for a second.
Yeah.
That is a great, it really, we're working on it. We're doing this specific thing, but that really brought me close into the moment. I'm up here watching you guys jump in, but then when you take me, the way this telling does is different, because now all of a sudden I'm in the water with you.
Gotcha.
and that's just something to think about, and that's what one of the reasons to do this place type stuff. Next
Great.
on the chopping block is
Dan,
yeah.
thank you. I really appreciate it. Really, really has helped me. Thanks.
I am glad that was good. Noah, I'm gonna throw you up next.
Yeah, all right.
I'll pin you up. So I'm gonna go back. I was sort of pushing you on this originally. I'm gonna go back and have you do the pack out story. And I want you to be as grossed out as possible by what is behind you.
Okay. Where do you want me to start? What section?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one, and we'll give the viewers who may not have seen that show a little bit. He's on a long hiking trip. He ends up having to go to the bathroom. He wants to leave no waste behind, and so he packs it up and then hides it on his pack right behind his head because there's no other place to put his feces. I think let's play. Let's play around with it. I think let's just start at the beginning and play it like you're super upset with yourself for coming up with the idea, and just like that process of having the idea, knowing that you're going to go through with it, and just like play that up.
All right. So the next morning I wake up, I eat the rest of my food, and because I'm a very regular person, as soon as I've eaten, I realize that the reverse process is going to happen. But I'm at the tip of a mountain range, and there's nowhere to go. Any direction I look, I can see the valley below, and I'm sort of panicking about what I'm going to do. Can I just wait? No, I cannot wait. What am I going to do? And what I'm going to do with the poop once I've done my dirty deed. So I decide what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a crevice to hide from any random busload of school children going to the prying eyes of any school children going to work. I'm going to do my business into a plastic bag. I'm going to tie it up, and I'm going to put it in my pack, and I'm going to pack it out. And it's going to be the most disgusting thing I've ever done in my life. It's going to be the most shameful thing I've ever done in my life. But having come up with a plan, I am committed, and I do it.
All right. One more time, I'm going to have you, I want you to go, because this is the play, be as gross as possible. Give us the details of like picking it up, like finding the bag that you're going to use. And I'm picking it up. I won't even do this for a dog.
All right. You guys are all welcome. This is the best thing you've ever gotten for free, I'm sure. So I'm in a crevasse. There's a bag beneath me, ready to receive my shame. I'm clinging to the rock, hovering, and I do my disgusting, shameful, sinful business. And I look down, and I'm proud of myself. And the steam is rising off of this beautiful work of art I've created. And I gather up, it's the shopping bag, I tie it off, I get another bag. I put it in that. I tie it off. I find a Ziploc bag because as beautiful as it is, it needs to stay contained. And it goes in the compartment right by my head, so I can know that, I can know it's safe.
That's
and
great.
It's contained.
That's fantastic. Now, what are your just thoughts right off the bat? How do you feel? Because that seems like so much
funny.
better. It's so funny. I think that I will tell you, I did not envision it correctly. Again, with that idea of storytelling triangle, you're gonna say one thing, and you never know what's in the audience's head. You're trying to communicate as best as you can, but they're gonna think different things. And so the more specific you get, the closer you guys are going to get together. And sometimes it doesn't matter whether you're close. Again, everything's a choice. There's pros and cons to these choices. But in this example, I definitely thought he dug a little hole, shit in the hole, then he got his bag out and picked it up. It's a much different thing to have him sitting there, pants around his ankles, straight into the bag. I'm not going to touch this. That seems so dangerous to me. I'm going to put it straight into the bag. What if it's not as solid as you thought you were? Okay, all right.
That was not my first poop, Dan.
That was not the first time I had. So hopefully this has been helpful to give you some examples of what it means to go big in this play. And you don't have to. You can go the opposite. You can go smaller. You can put it up. But it's that idea of taking the moment, just playing with the moment. You don't always have to start the story and go through the whole thing. You can go straight to that middle, go straight to the part that is giving you trouble and work on that. Now that you have a sense of these processes, use them. What do I need to do more of? Do I need to do more telling it to myself? Am I in the phase where I just want to tell it live to somebody because I don't know what it's about? Am I at this stage where I'm I need some really hardcore feedback? You do different things for different parts, and it's just about the more you do it, the more you know where you are and what you need to go back to make the story better. And thank you guys very much for listening. So next piece of the show, as quickly as possible, is hello. Can we can we introduce ourselves in an interesting way? Bum bum bum. I'm going to start with TJ because he just put on his camera. And can you come up with a question to ask everyone? A favorite, worst, or best type of question. No, you got to unmute yourself.
That literally just popped up. That's why I looked down to read. Okay. Hello. To the everyone on the panel. Most people here see me and known me or met me before. And the one person on Twitch. Hello. I'm Olatunji Bledsoe. And hello.
Hello.
Oh, it kind of glitched out. Yeah, I am Olatunji Bledsoe. And one question I like to ask people. Favorite secret hobby and why?
Ooh. Favorite. This is good. What is this?
So what I mean by secret hobby is everyone has most people have hobbies that some people may think are weird or quirky, etc., etc. And I'd like to know, what are those?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm not too secretive about this, but a little bit. Uh, for a brief, glorious moment of my life, I played Magic the Gathering, which is a card game, kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh, for a living. And I would just like hustle little kids, mostly on the internet, and I would win their cards and then I'd sell them. A few years ago, I met a girl and she played, and then we went to a tournament and I was like super sweating it because I had told her that I'd played for a living, and through the crux of luck, because I hadn't played in a really long time, I ended up being number 2 in the tournament, and I looked real cool to myself. I know
Okay,
Noah's.
I go
Okay.
next.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay, I'm really Abigail. Just ignore that name you see up there. Um, anyway, like none of y'all look familiar except for Noah, but okay. Hi. Um, so I don't know if this is a weird hobby or it's a fetish, but I'm completely obsessed with counting people's toes. So if you show your toes, if you have on sandals, if you're a man and you have to brag that you got a pedicure, which that might be kind of weird, but men on my timeline do this from time to time. I don't know if it's supposed to be a turn on for women or men, but somehow they need to draw attention to this. I'm going to count your toes. Sandals, open toe shoes, men that are showing off their pedicure. I'm going to count your toes. I don't know why, but I literally am obsessed with this belief that before I die, somebody's going to have extra toes. And I'm going to make sure I don't miss that.
That's great. That's legit.
I never ever would have thought of that.
That's it. That's the sign of a good question.
That's all I'm going to confess, okay?
Yeah. Kamaria, did you have one? Do you want to go next?
Hi, Abigail. I'm Kamaria. I know Dan because Dan's awesome, and we met through the interwebs. And then I've met everyone else here, which is amazing. My secret hobby is not special. The most special thing about it is how cliche it is. It's like women go to the mirror and have like a secret dance party just by themselves, and you got just like whatever you want to wear. Maybe you got a glass of Chardonnay or water, just crank up the volume. Nobody can see me. And I'm just dancing in my room. Um, I think that it's just normal. It's just so normal that it's boring. So it's not, there's nothing extra great about it, except I think it brings world peace. I don't know if you've ever seen videos of folks like indigenous cultures and folks are dancing to bring a certain thing into fruition. I think when you dance in your mirror, you add to world peace because you're happier. So you're less of a jerk to other people. So there you go.
That's good.
Oh, I can go. I can't match any of these. But I have this real interest in what were called in the 60s when I came of age, went to college, underground comics. R. Crumb is somebody who's known. But my favorite character in all that is a guy called Mr. Natural.
I'm not
And
familiar.
Mr. Natural is this little squat guy, and he's got a long white beard. And there's a guy named Fluky Flake, who is like the standard guy with a hat on, like going to work every day, in some middle level job. And at one point, he's looking over the fence, and Mr. Natural is going by on his little scooter, pushing along on his scooter, and he says, Mr. Natural, tell me what it all means. And Mr. Natural goes, it don't mean shit. Anyway, I still have my collection of those, and I look at my Mr. Natural comics every once in a while.
Susan, your everything is turned off. I'm not entirely sure if you are still with us. And so, Noah, you should go next.
Okay, first I want to know what you think my secret hobby is.
I was just gonna give you an easy one of baking bread.
Oh, yeah, that is a hobby of mine. But I wanted to come up with something secret that nobody knows about, that maybe I don't even know about. And what I came up with is this. A few years ago, a friend of mine whose parents are from Burundi told me that when she was growing up, her parents basically did not believe in refrigeration. And so any food that was made was just left out and eaten, which in my household, that would never happen. We were very paranoid about food spoilage. And so a little bit, once I found this out, I have ever since been pushing it a little bit and a little bit more, not refrigerating food and eating it when it is a little questionable. So I think that is my secret hobby, seeing how close to getting myself really ill I can get.
All right, Susan, are you ready?
Am I on now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. You know, I don't know that I have a secret hobby, but I did bounce until I went to college, and
Oh.
so I started off with rocking horses, and my parents moved it up into the attic in Kalamazoo. So, and I only do this in the middle of the night. So first I go to bed, and then I wake up in the middle of the night, and then I have to crawl up the stairs to the rocking horse in the attic. And then we moved to St. Joe, and somehow they got rid of my rocking horse. And then I had to bounce in the living room on the couch in the middle of the night. And then I destroyed it. So my mom moved it downstairs. So then I had to go all the way downstairs in the middle of the night. Then we moved to Grand Rapids, and she was like, you can't destroy any more of my couches. And so then I had to put pillows up on the wall, which I shared the other side with my brother, who never complained, which is still beyond me. And I would bounce there. And then I did that all through high school until I had to go away to college. And I was like, I'm pretty sure when I'm sharing a room with like 3 other young ladies that this is not gonna fly. Oh, that's when I finally quit.
That's great. Now, does TJ get off the hook?
I can go.
All right.
So mine isn't. So it's not extremely weird, but my secret hobby is I like to collect dress socks.
Oh.
Yeah. I have an ungodly amount of dress socks. So, yeah, no one knows that except my girlfriend.
That's great.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a prepared story that they want to work on today?
Then just so you know, I do have a story, but
You've got
nobody
your story.
gets to critique mine.
What? But that's the whole show. We got to give you feedback. You don't have to take it. You don't have to take it. So yeah, I should throw this out there that, at this point, all of us know each other. We are friends. We are in this storytelling community, and this is a process. No one who is in here is critiquing life choices. No one is critiquing who you are as a person. We're all in some stage of crafting these stories. They can change. They have these different frames. We're going to find different ways about it. We all trust each other, and that's why it's sort of a closed group, is you can get that feedback and you can be safe with these people to do goofy things. So just respect that in comments and things like that if you're shooting around in that way. I have been working on some stories, and I would happily be the first person if no one else wants to go tonight.
I can go first.
Oh, would you want to go first?
Season.
Yeah, all right.
These people don't look like they can fight me. I'm okay.
All right. You go first.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. He had said, I want you to have a baby for me. I want you to have a baby for me for the 100th time, and I protested as usual, citing the fact that I did not have my degree yet and he had his. The next night, he made this vainglorious announcement like one I had never heard before. My prophet in Africa said that without fail, I will have a child before December's end. He marched away proud and happy, and I was left standing there like, what the fuck? With who? I had fled to the arms of this man and right into his place, trying to escape my parents' house that I had crash landed back into after being kicked out of school. I didn't even believe in shacking up. But after being date raped my first year of college by my study partner and spiraling down into alcohol abuse to cope and sleep, life back at home with the rents was complicated. And my father and I got into a major altercation. I also didn't believe in ever dishonoring my parents. But once he was choking me, I was quite provoked to defend myself, especially seeing as how when I was 9 years old, I had to jump on this same man's back to fight him off my mother, whom he was suffocating to the point that her face was turning blue. I thought I better fight before cold blue because, of course, she wasn't there to save me. And I highly doubt that she would have if she was. In light of all that and more drama and trauma I don't have time to tell you about now, Sunday, this African man who seemed to adore me, seemed just as likely as a savior as anyone, and I quickly made him mine. Well, it turns out I was the mysterious mother of this African prophecy. I wonder to this day if it was written into some celestial stone somewhere long before I was born. Because in spite of using condoms that I guess Sunday, my African savior, poked holes into, I was soon pregnant and delivered my son Isaiah 3 weeks early on December 12th. Before December's end, like that African prophet said. I asked Sunday to pick an African name for our baby, and he was like, Oluwafemi. No. Babatunde. No. Simi Ilo Oluwa. Hell no. Etc., etc., until he got to Oludare. I said, ooh, wait, I like that. It is short for Oluwadamilare, which means God brings joy from sorrow. I was well acquainted with sorrow by that time, and even the birth of a child was overshadowed by it. By the time I knew Sunday was crazy and abusive and had some really archaic and misogynistic ideas about women, and on that day, I found out he was actually 18 years older than me when the information was given for my son's birth certificate. He had lied to me about a lot of things. He had promised to marry me, but that would have been a huge mistake anyway. And I had found out he was already married to 2 other people. It was over for us. He was apparently no savior for me. I was horrified to be a single mother. It seemed like a fate worse than death, but I didn't sign up for all of that craziness and to be preyed upon by a man old enough to be my daddy. I'm really tired of all the violence of the city and indirect threats of violence. And when I witnessed a murder after the Taste of Chicago, I just ran away to a small town in Missouri. I lived in hotels for a while and then secured Section 8 housing in a townhouse, low income project. There was always plenty of drama around there. For a while, I had felt some peace getting away from all of the noise and more of the city, but there was nothing to do there that interested me. And the more I experienced the quietness and slowdown of Missouri, the more I thought about my life and all that was wrong in it, the more the more I felt hate and bitterness and shame. I had never gotten counseling after being date raped. It actually wasn't the first time I was sexually assaulted, and I never reported either of those incidents. Um, Being violated without remedy nor justice and being isolated in a new city, well, little town, took its toll on me. On most nights, I placed my son on the far side of the bed by the wall, and I would sit on the edge and drink until I fell asleep. When I found a cheap babysitter, I would go out dancing 4 nights a week, just escaping from my tortured thoughts and single motherhood. I didn't enjoy 1 ounce of my motherhood back then, and I couldn't call myself a good mother by any stretch of the imagination. When I was growing up, there was so much dysfunction and cussing and fighting and walking on eggshells in my household that I fantasized a lot about having a family of my own with a husband that would truly love me and spoil me, and children that would love me so much that it would heal all of my broken pieces inside. I also wanted to become a doctor and to help heal people physically. As I was existing in misery, commonly pronounced Missouri, I just drank to the bottom of every bottle, trying to escape the pain of my life, being so far removed from any semblance of the life I had planned for me in my head. And I went through a series of horrible, emotionally abusive relationships. I hated my life, and my young disabled son was just kind of dragged along for the ride. I did finally meet a good man at the club one night, though, on the same night that I left an abusive man. He thought I was going to be a one-night stand, but I'm not that easy. After he got over the pain of continued rejection, we talked all night long until the next afternoon. When he noticed it was dawn, we were like, no way. And we laughed and kept talking until we were starving, which was about 12 hours after we had left the club. He cooked us lunch, and from there we were inseparable, and we ended up getting married. My dreams were finally coming true, I thought. He showed me love and affection, and he cared for my son and promised to adopt him. He helped me become a better mom. He was calm and patient and reserved, and he helped to balance me. We had started going to church, and I stopped partying and using alcohol to get to sleep cold turkey. I loved him, and I tried to be a good wife. I learned quickly that I had no idea how to do that. And our marriage had some issues because I was a product of my past family dysfunction. But My whole life changed though, and we rose and prospered together financially and otherwise. This was the highest point of my adult life, but my paradise was not to be everlasting. Legal problems from my spouse's homeland became a force that tore us apart. Interpol was after him for accusations that he had embezzled funds from his former employee, and he went on the run. I was abandoned and he would never come back. And long after I knew that, I discovered that I was not long after I knew that, I discovered that I was pregnant, even though the doctors had said that I would never be able to conceive again. Well, apparently, getting pregnant precisely at the worst time ever is my superpower. I cried every day for 56 days straight and not a day more because I heard that if a mother cries while pregnant, then she will have a crying baby. My whole life changed dramatically in some dark and painful ways. Neither Sunday nor marriage proved powerful enough to save me. And plus, I was plunged into poverty. I was evicted at 8 months pregnant because I had to take $300 plus of new meds. And although I did not start drinking again, I spiraled down into the abyss of despair. I suffered through 3 years of a sexless, male companionless existence, raising a special needs child who had severe behavior issues at the time and a small child alone. I did my best to care for my children, but I was going through the motions. My marriage that was obliterated was the biggest hope I had to be saved from my life of pain, and soon the weight of present pressures joined with the flashbacks and wounds of the past traumas. I was crushed under the weight of depression. I couldn't take it anymore, so I scheduled a day to end my life. It ironically concluded with the holidays when a mama like me couldn't afford to buy my sons any gifts or even make a nice Christmas for my children. I couldn't conjure laughter or even fathom how I could make a good time for them. I would just disappear. So I called my mother in Chicago and said, "Hey, you want to see your grandbabies for Christmas?" And she said, "Yes." And her and my daddy came and got them and had no inkling that I was planning on checking out permanently. So there I was alone, and I planned the date and time of my departure, but I got bored and got on the internet. I didn't cry out. I didn't cry out for help to anyone. I just started up a conversation with a music producer I didn't even know, and he wanted to call me. I was like, sure, I ain't got nothing else to do. We talked for hours and hours, though, about music. And I told him something I never talked about with any of my friends. I mentioned that my son was deaf and had autism. I was so ashamed and felt cursed that I had a disabled son on top of all of the traumas of life, that even when people hung around me and knew me for years and would speak to my son and he wouldn't answer back, I wouldn't explain it. This was the early morning now, and he said, "I knew that it was something special about you." I said, "What? What do you mean?" I was shocked and not even feeling at all special in the last 3 years. He said, "God only entrusts the care of special children into the hands of very special people." This blew my mind. I had never even thought for 1 second that I was worthy or special or trusted with this child. Then I had flashbacks of a new kind I never had before. My mind flashed back to when I was young and used to play with the children with Down syndrome and other issues when no one else would, and was bullied for it. And when I went to high school that had a program for deaf students, and none of the hearing students would associate with them. But I went out of my way to learn some signs and befriended several, and even advocated for the deaf students when mall security accused them of throwing up gang signs. I spent so many years hating my life and hating my motherhood and despising the disappointments and condition of my life that I really was not able to see past all of the pain to find my purpose for being here. I was so busy believing in curses that I couldn't find the blessings. Looking back over my life, there were lots of mistakes that I made and a lot of wrong turns that I took, many propelled by trauma and depression. But the biggest mistake I made was accepting the belief that because there was pain, that my life had no meaning. My sons needed me, and I was assigned to them on purpose, even though I didn't plan them, and I especially didn't plan the conditions they were born into. Nowadays, I have shared stories that have created awareness and helped people and have been powerful in their lives and have been powerful to create change in this world that has pain in it that doesn't have to overpower us. I learned all of this in the moment of realizing I had purpose, and it took almost ending it all to see it clearly. I couldn't see the joy that could be had from out of my sorrow. Today, I seek out the joy and blessings and am thankful for this clarity and knowing I have a purpose for still being here. That propels me and compels me daily as I give my all in being a mother, an activist, an advocate, a humanitarian, and a world changer. Inside of being overcome continually by the darkness, I meant instead of being overcome continually by the darkness, I decided to be a light. And this is how I live and embrace life each day.
That was great.
Thank you.
I understand why you didn't want to be critiqued.
Well, you're welcome to. You're welcome to. I was just teasing.
Yeah, one of the questions that we often start off with at this show is, in your telling right here, is there stuff that stuck out to you? Were you like,
Yeah.
oh, I could hit this differently, or anything?
Yeah, I did a lot of run-on sentences. And there was something else, but I forgot because I literally just got like overwhelmed by it all. I mean, like the fact that like the other day, I mean, today's the 14th, so my son's birthday was December 12th. And it's the holidays again. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Like this is, you know how you could think you're going through the worst time ever in your life and then some more shit happens. It's like I was suicidal at that time and I thought that I was going through the worst fate ever. And now it's like the whole fate of the world is like uncertain, and I probably know of like 25 people that died. 3 of them died last week. My ex mother-in-law died last week. And it's just like, wow. Like there's a whole lot going on that can make almost anybody feel hopeless, you know? It's just like,
Yeah.
it's something I try to explain to my teenage son who acts special. So I got a special son and a teenage son who acts special. Something I try to explain to him is that, you know, life is about perspective, you know? Like if I was suicidal back then, like I could more easily be suicidal right now. You know, like is death all around? Is people in the ICU on ventilators? I have health issues. Like for like April, May, June, like I was pretty terrified I was gonna die because I was sure, like I've been told my immune system is compromised and stuff. So like it's like I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot going
It's
on.
yeah, but I mean just for the record, I'm in no way suicidal. And it really has to do with, like I said, I know my purpose. I feel like, yeah, it's so much going on, but I mean, I'm gonna keep on pressing.
Yeah, I think that comes through very clearly at the end of this, the way you have it, and that's good. That sense, that's what this is about, is getting to that change moment. And so it's a good story. It's got tough stuff, and you can, again, it's all about choices, but it's nice that this story is one that can work where it's got tough stuff, but it doesn't leave people with that, right? You take us as an audience on a journey, and we get to transform with you and see that happen and get that tension released a little bit. And that's very effective in the way you do it. And it doesn't, not everything's solved, as you talked about afterwards, right? But it doesn't need it. But that little release valve for us, you don't make us sit with it. Some so one question I have for you is, do you want this to be shorter?
Oh, now I do.
Okay.
Like
It
the
is good.
first time I did it, I thought, it's long, but let them suck it up. It's a deep story. But
Yeah.
now I really see how it could be shorter. But I think I've come a long way. I've had to write so many speeches since I've done this story, and those speeches have to be on point. So I think I've come a long way in how I craft the story. So I would go back and slice that story up, and I would question, like, how much of the exact trauma details I have to share. Like, did I really have to tell that I was raped, or could I just,
Yeah.
skip that and it still would be, because
Yeah.
it's hard for people to digest. That's
Right.
what I
Yep.
I don't like about Tyler Perry. He throws out all these, like, rape, molestation, catching a disease from your spouse, and it's like he throws all that stuff out there. And it's like, yes, it's important for these things to come to light. I think it's important to talk about rape because it's so taboo, etc.
Sure.
But I put too many. Like, suicide is heavy for people to hear, right? So rape is heavy for people to hear. It could be triggering. So I could have said that, I experienced various traumas. I experienced sexual abuse, and I could have left it at that, or I could have not said it, and the story would still be powerful. But
Yeah.
I didn't see that as clearly till now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's one thing for us to think about as we're like giving things, and what do we how do we cut this down, and what's the essence? What do we really want to keep? And like, how do we make this, I think it it's good long, and it has a place for the shows and venues that have like 10-15 minutes, which exist all about. So you can keep this. It's not like you scrap this, but all these stories, again, with the different framings and things like that, stories can telescope. They've got that elasticity, that plasticity of how they change, sort of like what we were talking about before. And so cutting it down, one of the first things is, how do you start as close to the end as possible? And for me, you could start this right at calling your parents. Do you want to
Yeah.
see your kids? Is a
Yeah.
very powerful image. Another thing that I'm going to talk about that I noticed is I would like to see you set more scene for this. And with this cutting straight to there, maybe it's in your house and you keep it there, and then you're free associating out of it. You're doing that flashback. You already have a flashback to you helping kids and stuff like that. I want to keep that. I feel like that's really good. But setting scene, opening with dialogue is something that I like to do, but you want to get the scene in there as quickly as possible because there are people, we all have imaginations that work differently, and there's a set of people that if they don't have the scene, they just can't follow it because they're questioning where is it? How old are these people? Where are they setting? I am not like that. My imagination just fills it in, and then if you correct me later, then I just correct it and it goes back. But I know from practicing it and talking with people and stuff like that, there's a woman who runs a church that Mac and I work on, and she did this experiment with me one time in a group of people. And I don't know if I've done this with you guys, but if I say imagine a boy standing at the top of a stairwell with a ball in his hand. Do any of you imagine the skin color of the boy? Do any of you see him completely uncolored? Like he's like blank? Do you know what color the ball is?
Yeah, I've got a red ball and a white boy.
How tall is the stairwell?
It's about 6 feet.
Is there a railing?
Yes.
How about for other people? Did they fill out an entire image of everything?
Am I weird because I changed it? Like at first, for real, at first I saw like a black boy. This might be racist. I don't know. I saw a black boy, and it was like the stairwell of the stairs of kind of like a nice, decent middle class home, and then I saw the black boy in a project stairwell and with a red ball, and that might be racist. But I've been in the projects before, so
I don't think that's racist. I changed the boy that I saw too. At first, it was a little black boy. And then when I started to imagine it's a long stairwell. It's not short. It's not 6 feet. It goes really far down and it's pitch black at the bottom. And all the light is behind him. So all the darkness is in front of him. I was like, he's in a horror movie. The black boy would not stay here at the top of this stairwell and wait for whatever is about to come get him or he drops his ball down. No, so I switched it and it was a little white boy and he had a striped shirt on. He's got his shorts.
Yep.
And he's questioning too. He's got some survival instincts. He's like, should I be standing at the top of the stairwell? And yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah. So Noah, you nodded your head like you didn't color in the ball.
I didn't color in the ball. Um, it was a very Dickensian scene for me. It was definitely like an 18th century street urchin. Because I was like, what kid plays with a ball these days? Uh, Also, I wonder if everyone. I was an observer at the bottom of the stairs, and I was looking up at the boy. I wonder if that was the same or different for people. Just out of curiosity.
Uh, Usually that's where I am at, but I wonder if because I was doing the experiment, I was behind the boy in this sense, looking over his shoulder from the top.
No, I saw him from the bottom of the stairs. That's how I knew something was down there.
Yeah. All right. So there is sort of an illustrative example of the importance of setting that scene, because there's a subset of people who won't fill anything in, and they'll have a bunch of blank images, and they'll have translucent balls and so on and so forth. And kids who don't have faces, and they just don't fill anything in if you don't give it to them. And the other thing is, we all think of it wrong, and you're really trying to paint a very specific picture. You remember what happened back there. So the more details you give us, the closer we're going to be to your reality, and we'll be there with you. And just setting it up in the beginning, like whenever you see a movie, there's a name for it, development shot or whatever. If it's set in New York, they shoot over the city, and then they go through the streets, and they're running the credits. If it's set in small town Ohio, it goes over a cornfield, and then it goes over a barn. You know what I mean? It's just setting it up for people. So you're like, oh, this is where we are. They're establishing shots. That's what they're called. And it's because we need that sense of place. To get invested in the story, we gotta know the sense of place. And so you can start with I'm okay with starting with a good opening line. I think it's ripe for it to be like, do you want to see your kids? Because there's a great twist there, right? I'm giving up the kids because I think I'm going to kill myself. That's a hook. I'm going to listen to the rest of that story, right? But as early as possible, set that scene. Give us some sort of setting. People love knowing the time. It's starting to become cliches. More and more people do it. It's 1995, and I am blah, blah, blah. But they're doing it all the time because the establishing shot is important. Do other people have things that they want to talk about?
Abigail, I just want to say that it's an incredibly impactful story. There's so much impact in it. There's the impact of what you lived through in terms of trauma. There's the impact of that switch. When you just experienced that flash of what your purpose was. And then there's the impact of what you've done with your life since then. So anyway, I just want to say that I think you have a lot of different stories there, and you can go ahead and start like where you want to, and like you could even start in that place and say, I didn't know. I 5 years ago, it's 5 years before this, I was in this situation, and paint this one of those situations, and you could say, and I had no idea that 3 years later I would be, do you know what I mean, leading workshops or advocating or whatever. You've got all these places you can go in this timeline, and take us with you. And I don't think you'll have any trouble getting people to go with you. It's just so impactful and so powerful. So thank you. Thanks for your story.
Some of the stuff, because I know you, that you've done that's impactful with your storytelling is hard to explain. Not hard, but the impactful stuff you did is like a whole story, right? Going to the legislature, having that conversation, that's its own story. But in that moment, giving us something specific and figuring out, I don't know what the language is, but I think that would be good to be specific there. And this is something that your mileage can vary. There are some people who like it better if you don't reveal that you're you're trying to. It depends what the venue is. At, say, a Moth, you're trying to pull people in and paint this picture, and they should be right there with you. But if you're at more of a TED Talky type thing, you reminding people that they're at a TED Talk, that audience wants it, right? And so one little plasticity that story can change. To be specific, you can be, the impactful thing can be what you're doing. And now I'm on stage right now telling this story. But whether you do that depends on, do you want to pop people out of the story to remind them they're sitting in a hall, or do you want to keep them close with you, right? But that is one solution to getting the specific there.
I just wanted to share, it stood out to me when you said believing in curses, I couldn't see the blessings. I really appreciated the phrasing that you gave there. It just sort of like was that breaking of the clouds moment, like Mac mentioned, that there's the turning point for you. And that phrase just marked the turning point so well to me. And I also think, in terms of place, if you're setting that physical place, I also sometimes like that idea of having the cultural place being set for you. And I think you did that in certain instances really well, talking about um, the area where you were, and it was the projects here, or it was a different setting there, to give folks an idea of like class and culture and other details we can fill in. Like with the curses, for coming from an African American background, for me, I think about generational curses, or the idea in the Black community of curses, of something negative that can follow you. So I could see that as a segue into the storytelling too. Like if you're talking about the place, and then you're like, I believed in curses. And then by the end of the story, you could say, believing in curses, I couldn't see the blessings, but now I see the blessings. So you give people even more context for, just if you wanted to, some of the cultural space there. And then I really liked how you sort of broke the longer story down into these eons. They were kind of marked by like the savior, and then the husband on the run, and then the music producer. But then it came around to you, and it was about you being able to um like share your story and make a positive impact, and you're in a different place. So I thought that was a cool way to punctuate the story too.
Yeah. Yeah, just to reiterate, I really like the long version, and I want that to still exist. I don't want to have you work on a 5-minute, 7-minute one and get that golden, and then be like, I don't need this other one. Like, the other one is good, and it's just a different thing for a different venue. some line things. I think I wrote down the curse thing as powerful for me too, and that sort of I've never heard of it like said like that, and it's a good unique voice. But there were a couple. There's one was walking on eggshells. That is a cliche. You can use it. They have their value. But because I know you have the great facility of language, I would like to see you look for those sorts of turns of phrases that come to our minds quickly and expand on those and do them your way. Say them in your words. And there were a couple places like that.
I just want to say I want you to keep the Missouri and misery one in. I liked that a lot. It just like gave a little like, you know, because your story is like so like, I don't know how to, it's just tragic until you like turn it around at the end. That just to add that little bit of like kind of levity in it with that, was helpful for me. And I do appreciate that you threw that in because I'm like, I know you can't see me, but yeah, I'm like, just like the whole story, I'm just like, you know, like, and then, so just to give me something where you're like, okay, she's gonna be okay. She can still, you know, say something kind of funny was really helpful. So I do appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
Would you would you be up for trying the shorter version, trying at just like doing it extemporaneously, off the top, and just start at that phone call moment and do to your grandparents or to your parents, and then finish it out there. The way I see it, and you do it how you want to do it, but then I think you can just get a line, you know, I've done this because, well, let's see let's take a minute and like write out the parts and we'll talk about it together. So the way I see it being a 5-minute is open with that phone call to your parents. Then it's talk. You do the reveal of I've done this not for them but for me, so I can be alone when I kill myself. And you can just say, I think you can boil the first two stories down into a sentence. And it's, my first husband, I found out he had 2 other wives, so we didn't actually get married. My second husband, Interpol chased him out of the country, and I know that I will never see him again. And I think, and then you can just say, you can imagine that this is indicative of my luck. You know, because you were already saying like the trauma stuff is big. So I'm just saying that to like avoid, you can indicate it how you want, you know, I'm not trying to give you like very specific lines, but that's one sentence, boom, boom. And the third thing, you just tell people, you already know that there's other bad shit in my life. I've told you those 2 things. You know there's a third and fourth and fifth thing that I'm dealing with. And then you tell the story. And I think it gives you some room in this to expand. And I don't know whether you need it, but to expand into, and then I remembered helping out these deaf kids. and then where would it go from there? How does it wrap up?
Ma, are you done with the meeting?
No, baby.
Huh?
No,
You're not?
no.
Why do you sound like that?
Because it was very hard for me.
What happened?
Hold on.
What was hard?
Hi.
Dan.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if you heard my son talking to me in the background, but I threw the laptop after I told y'all the story. I threw the laptop over there because it
Okay.
was very hard for me. So when you asked me where's the next part, like how shall I put it? Like I was trying to tell you afterwards, like I like this story like
You need a
really
minute.
impacted me. It
Yeah.
did.
You can-
And like the whole time towards the end, I was holding back tears. It's just that I'm so professional. I didn't let y'all see that.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like,
You
oh, I
want?
really love your feedback. Oh,
Yeah.
it's really good. And I wanted, that's why I went to go get the computer. But my
Yeah.
son was like, are you finished? And I was like, no. He was like, Mom, why do you sound like that? I was like, because it was hard
It's
for
a
me.
lot. Yeah. All right.
So,
We
so
don't have
yeah,
to. We can skip the doing it again part.
thank you.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I have it in me right
No, it's good. You
now. I
did a
try
good
to
job.
be professional,
No, you're
but
great. This
like
is what it's for. This is what this show's for. And it's a
this,
workshop show. We're figuring it out. So
it
thank you
was
for
really real. And I appreciate your feedback. And I'm gonna take it into consideration, but I don't think I could do it right now.
yeah.
'Cause it's very heavy.
Yeah. Uh so moving on, is it my turn to do a story, or has this triggered and somebody's like, oh, now that I've heard Abigail's story, I want to do one?
Dan, can I
Yeah.
put somebody on the spot though for a minute?
Okay.
Okay, really, Ola Tunji, I really want to know, like, how you felt about me, like, mimicking his accent, and then, using African names. Some were similar to yours when I was going over the African names. I don't know if you came here from Africa or your parents or something, but I know that your name is African. I've known this name. So, how do you feel about that? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I mean,
Oh, no, it's perfectly fine. Coincidentally, I was actually just sending a message to you through the meeting. So first,
oh,
instead of me finishing that, I'll just say what I was about to say. Thank you so much for sharing. It really takes so much courage to be able to put all of your feelings and everything out there. And I know initially when you said, the feedback and it was a joke, of course, there's some seriousness in jokes, and I just want you to understand that it takes a lot to be able to tell a story. And the first part, definitely one of the parts of healing is to be able to outwardly have that conversation in an open environment. I mean, what it stuff. That's first thing. So I'm proud of you. It really takes courage. The second thing is I am not African in the traditional African from Africa sense. Funny story, not funny. Uh, my name came from my uncle. So there's no direct from Africa, um, you know, type of thing. Like,
Oh,
you know what I mean. Like we
yes,
from
sir.
Africa, but not, you know. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
So
you.
I,
I
but
really
just
appreciate that.
uh in the general, so that it doesn't affect you, but did anybody else think about that when she was nixing names as a joke? Did anybody feel like that was an off-color joke, or that's not, feel a little sort of, oh, I'm too PC for this?
Was that racist? Just go ahead and say it. Was that racist?
I mean, I had the same thing happen to me, but it was the family that I married into was listing every Cub player's name, and I was supposed to name my children after a Cubs player. So when you told your version, I'm just like, yeah, I know what that feels like, So I didn't
Oh my God.
as just like this is what families do to people who are pregnant, and what's up with that. So that's how I saw it.
Oh wow. Thank you.
Uh, I think that
I
that
like that
was,
part. Oh, I like that part because you went into the voice of the person you were talking to, and he's like rattling off voice the names, and you're like, no, absolutely not. Whoa, certainly not. No, not that one. And when you finally got to the name that you really appreciated, you were like, oh, okay. You melted into it. So I think as the audience, we could also be like, is this a cultural breakdown where you're rejecting the names because they're unfamiliar, or once you get to the last name, it's like, okay, maybe you were really looking for something in particular, a sound, a feeling when you heard the name and you knew it was going to be right. So I think we're following you into this place where it's like, okay, this man's from a different culture, and maybe there's a little bit of disconnect there with you, pushing away these first names, but to embrace the last name, it's like, okay, like you were really looking for something in particular to move you. So we understand, to me as the audience, that it wasn't so much about rejecting his culture. It was about looking for what you were looking for. That's what I got from it. And I like that you did the voice because it's familiar to me. My also, I'm not African from Africa, but my family's from everywhere. And I love when folks are just adamant about what they're talking about. You're like, he had grandiose pronouncements and he's telling you what's going down. I was just like, I know who you're talking about.
yeah. Yeah, the
Thank you.
characterization was really good in that scene. I had the same mind travel as Kamaria. There was a little bit for me where I was like, oh, she's rejecting the names, and then because your performance was so good in that section that he was distinct and you were distinct, and doing voices like that is tough to keep them when you're doing different characters. But you were doing it so well that your relationship to me shone through, and it's like you can have that oh no with your husband when you can't have that with some stranger. You can't have that with like somebody off the street. You had a relationship with him, and that showed through the performance. And then at the end, when you're like, that name, yes, I came to the same conclusion that Kamari did. I was like, she was searching for a thing. It wasn't a rejection of him. It became clear, and I sort of liked that. I don't know what the word, liminal like tension that you gave me in that. It can be fun to be like, oh, is she saying something crazy? oh, she isn't. Oh, good. You know, that's a journey you take people on. And it's cool that you are so in tune with yourself and with other people that you would be like, hey, wait up. I need to ask this question. And that's a good reminder for all of us of like, you got, again, that storyteller ear. The more you do this, the more you think, oh, there's people I got to go to. This is a story that I'm going to tell. Let me go to somebody and that I trust that I can ask the question. And it's always good. I need to use the restroom very fast, and I will be right back.
You got a bag?
Take your plastic bag with you, buddy.
I will
Hey.
aim. I have peed before. I will aim it. I will be back quickly, and if you could be entertaining for the folks and talk about storytelling or stories, I will come back with a short story for people, unless somebody has one that they want to do.
And
So,
Noah, thank you for kicking us off with that story. That's an awesome story.
Noah, I just had one detail I wanted to check with you. When you said that you took that and you put it in your pack, was right behind your head. Was it still warm?
Oh
That was
yeah. I didn't waste any time, you know.
So I think that would be a really nice little detail to put in there, that you could feel that warmth against.
Oh man. Are you married, Noah?
I am not. I'm not.
You don't want to ensure singleness for life now. Watch it. I just like hot steaming doo-doo on the back of my neck. Like, come on now, Noah.
It was a brave act of storytelling. It really was.
There's somebody for everybody. So there's some chick out there that's into that. It's not me, but somebody likes that.
So possible. Abigail, do you think that Noah is like into it? Like maybe that's what he does every day? Or do you think that was just one of those circumstantial things?
No, you gotta be into it to put it. I mean, anybody else, would have made like a cat and dug a hole and covered it back up. And just use your hind paws and kick some dirt over it, and just went on about their day. And so yeah, he's into that. The warmth on the back of the neck. That's an erotic zone for Taurus people. Are you a Taurus?
I am not a Taurus. I am not a Taurus.
Good to know.
That's an interesting part of the story, though. Is there something about like not leaving, like on that trail? Was there something about, okay, you wouldn't have time to cover this, so you need to take it away? Or was there like a secondary consideration? I don't know. It's like bears are attracted to this or something.
No, it was the very tip of the ridgeline. There wasn't really soil. I was really like on a cliff.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
That would be an exciting detail to add, like searching desperately for soil anywhere. No.
Nothing but rocks.
Yeah, nothing. It was barren.
Okay. So, am I doing the second story?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So this is the one I'm working on. And we're gonna try to implement some stuff I got in the last workshop I had. when I was in 6th grade, I had this deep, insane inner life where I thought all the time about the hierarchies that were going on. Who's the cool kid? Who's not cool? And I knew who I thought was cool, and I knew who the school thought was cool, and who the children thought were cool, and they didn't always match up, and I was really bitter about the whole thing because they were wrong and I was right. I knew who the cool people were. And one of the things about this was when we would go into our little Catholic school dungeon of a cafeteria that was hidden in the basement, we'd go down and there were just rows of tables everywhere. 8 people could sit on either side and they were just long. And there's that thing that happens where you got to choose who you sit with. Are you sitting with the cool kids or the cheerleaders or the nerds or the video game players? Are you sitting with younger kids? Are you trying to sit with older kids? There's all these different things, and you can see the sort of pecking order play out and build these sort of pyramid structures of who's on top and who's on the bottom of social hierarchy. I avoided all this by packing my lunch every day. And I would just go to the Packer side, which was on the left, and there were only 3 of us. So I was king of the Packers, and nobody could tell me who I was with because I knew I was cool. I was one of the coolest kids in school. I didn't need them and their bullshit hierarchies. And then one day they're doing maintenance on all those tables, and everybody is all packed in on my side. And I'm just like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And there's 3rd and like 2nd graders where I normally sit. I'm not sitting with the 3rd and 2nd graders, and I'm trying to make my choice. And I'm like, I guess I'm sitting with you today, Kraut, who's my friend. And he's like, I don't know about that. You don't sit with us. And I was just like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Who am I going to make this thing? And Joe Harvey goes and sits down. And Joe Harvey is my pick for the coolest kid in school. And I make my play. I'm just like, fuck it. I'm going to sit with Joe Harvey. I am a cool kid. I'm going to assert this fact. And I sit down across from him, and I sit with my packed lunch, and immediately Bully Nick comes by and is like, fucking Boyd, you're in my spot. And I look up and I say, there are no assigned seatings at lunch, Nick. And Harvey backs me up and he says, yeah, there's plenty of free seats. Find one. And just sort of waves him off. And he's just grumbling. Then he's like, fuck it, I'm going to go to the 8th grade table. He goes to the 8th grade table to try to sit with those kids, and they're like, the fuck, you're not sitting with us. And he has to come back, head hanging low, sitting next to me. He squeezes in to my right, just pissed. Shank, my buddy, sees that I'm sitting with these guys, and he sort of is a class clown, so he can move between these tables without too much trouble. So he takes the opportunity. He sits next to Harvey, and now we're all filled up. And I'm just like, oh, I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be okay. And to my left slithers in her cool leather jacket, her long hair, Tiffany Laser. And she sits right next to me. And my heart is like doing one of those like jackrabbit. And I'm just like, oh, I didn't think about this enough. I didn't think that she would be sitting at our table. I know that she sits with the cool kids. Oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing? And Shank says, Boyd! And he does a little drum roll. You're sitting next to your crush. How cool is that? Literal thermometer red all the way to the top. And I just like wipe it off my face. And I'm like, why would you do this to me? And everybody's laughing. And Shank's like, cordial. what you should do is give her a kiss. And I'm just like, you don't, why are you doubling down on, why are you doing, you are not my friend. And she says, is this true? Do you have a crush on me? And I'm just like, Tiffany. And then she turns and she's like, why'd you call him cordial? And he's like, because Boyd's so polite. I call him cordial as a nickname. And another kid goes, no. Harvey started calling him Boyd. And then to get it out faster, he started calling him Boyd. And then I called him Boydgel. And then you started calling him Cord. And then you turned it into cordial as a combination of all of those. And Harvey's like, that is correct. Facts. And Shank turns and he says, yeah, but it's also true that Boyd's really polite, so we call him cordial. And then everybody nods. Yeah. Boyd's polite. And she goes, and she goes, is that true? Are you polite? And I'm like, yes. And I would never kiss you at the lunch table. That would be ridiculous. Because our relationship is such that we're friends. We've been friends, close friends, good friends since 3rd grade. We're this kind of friends. And I reach slowly, one hand to be Ginger. This is the safest of hugs. I'm going to do a hug. They won't give me shit about kissing because I did a hug. I get away with it. I've got the plan. And just as gingerly as possible, I pull her in and I say, this is the kind of friends that we are. We're like hug friends. We can be like this. And she pushes me away and she says, Daniel Andrew Boyd, did you just touch my boob? No. Boyd's not a virgin anymore. Shank screams to everyone and everybody's head turns. And I'm like, your leather jacket, it's not even possible for me to have, oh my God. And everybody's cracking up. What did it feel like? That's incredible. Boyd copped a feel off Tiffany Lacer. And I eat my food and I leave and I run away. And for the next 2 weeks, no matter how much I protest, no one will believe me that I did not cop a feel off of Tiffany Lacer. And everybody is like, you are the coolest kid. I had no idea. You are my hero. What did it feel like? And I'm just like, it didn't. It did not. And there's just this thing, right? Of you have a perception of yourself for certain reasons. And you want people to have that perception of you. But you also want them to have them for the right reasons. And what control do you have? So the 6th grade news cycle is such that after 2 weeks, this dies down and I'm no longer the coolest kid in school. And I take it upon myself to go to her and attempt an apology. And I stutter out, I am not, Tiffany, calling you a liar. I'm just saying that, like, if it happened, it was so it just doesn't make sense because your jacket, and then, like, it was your arm into me, and these fingers don't feel like they're fingers that touched, and I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I'm sorry. And she looks at me and she says, I think a gentleman would say thank you. Oh. And then she turns and she walks away and she turns her head and she says, also, you're welcome. Thank you.
Wow.
What sort of feedback do you have for me?
I have so much
Um,
feedback. I'll go second.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say like one thing. Did that kid really say facts? Because I feel like that is nuanced language here that people use because of Facebook with the hashtag facts. And I don't know like how long people have been saying that. So it made me wonder, like, come on now, he didn't really say facts. Or I'm being petty. I don't know.
No, I updated the language to be kid slang today.
Aha!
I
I'm
did do that.
brilliant. I'm not petty. Okay. Okay, you can do that.
I love how there was the hierarchy set up of like, now you know who's cool, and then you know who gets put into the cool category, but they don't know what they're talking about. It's like I dated a DJ for like 7 years, and when he wasn't spinning records, we would go to other clubs. He would look in the window, see if the people looked cool, and if they didn't, he would walk on by like, no, we're not going there. We're not gonna. But like, there was a review last night said this music is great. Do you see who's in there? So there is a hierarchy apparently of who's cool. I've never known about it, but you had the insight as a young person. I liked your tone of voice and the pace change when Joe Harvey came onto the scene. It was so pronounced. It was like, okay, and what am I gonna do? The tables are full. I've gotta figure something else. And then Joe Harvey. It's like, okay, gravity has shifted. We know this dude is a big deal. And like the name Shank was such a great foreshadowing for me. I was like, this dude gonna get shanked? Because his attitude is petty. He was the worst. How are you gonna put your friend out like that? Why is his name Shank? I'm gonna have to ask about that later. But I also felt like Harvey had a nickname for you. Like he was a part of this logic train of people who were like, well, no. So the reason we call him this because of this, because of this, because of this. I was like, oh. So it was almost like you set yourself up as the outsider, but to hear that Harvey and friends all had a rationale for why they called you what they called you. And it seemed like, friendly, and it was just like this group discussion. It was like, okay, you're not an outsider. Somebody's talking about you. Somebody's thinking about you is the impression that that gave to me. So the people that you secretly thought were cool were also thinking of you is what I thought when I heard you say that. And then you had the temerity to finish your food after all this has gone down at this table. That was amazing. That was a show of character right there for sure. You were like, I've got my own opinions about who I think is cool. I like to do this my own way. I'll pack my own lunch. And when someone tries to humiliate me, I'm going to sit there and finish my lunch. So there. So I thought that was showing your character throughout the whole story. It was very consistent that you weren't going to do what people expected of you necessarily. Um, and I liked how you went to it. It did not, like, there's no way to get yourself out of that situation. So I thought this was a great, like, Me Too retrospective. Like, how would we see these older moments of our youth, with our current gaze on like what's appropriate to do with someone and what's appropriate to say and how the other person sees the situation like an Aziz Ansari moment, but you're a little kid. Like how the other person that's here sees this totally different from how I see it. And how do I conceptualize this and what's the best way to approach this? So I thought that was a whole other angle that I was going through in my mind. Like as an adult, how do we look back on these situations? And I'd wonder if you put any commentary into it at the end. Do you have an opinion of how you looked back at that situation?
Uh, it never crossed my mind for Shank as metaphor. That is just his name. But that's brilliant. That's brilliant. There are probably lots of moments. So looking back, I think she was just fucking with me. She did not think that I touched her breast. There is a possibility possibility that that was her way of diffusing what could be an escalating problem for us, right? Because she know, like, we don't need a table of people pounding their fists being like, you guys should kiss, 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 kiss. And that's sort of the nightmare that was going on in my head, to be like, I have to give them, these fucking jackals, something, or else, like, that's where this is about to go. But yeah, there are a couple other stories that she enjoyed fucking with me, and thought it was humorous, my horrible red-faced reactions.
So Dan, I have one thought for you. Just taking a page from your own book, I was thinking that it might be possible. I thought it was a great story. I just want to say that, but it might be possible to start this, as you said, start as close to the end as possible. But it might be able to start it when you end up trying to sit down, and you sit down across from Joe, Joe, and then you spin it out from there. This incredibly awkward situation you're put in because of your strategy with the packaged lunch didn't work, and then it just keeps getting worse and worse from there. So
yeah, I think that's nice. I do want to try that. Yeah, I actually cut a big section of that line out from my last telling, because they were like, you gotta be closer to that sitting down. But I need to just start right there and see how it feels. Just thinking back on it. You were talking about the, like, relationship Joe to me, like, he sort of protects me there. And I'm not clear, and this is a question to everybody, does that hook you? In other tellings, people like the ambiguity, but I've gotten a couple people being like, it doesn't make sense, you're not a cool kid, and why is this cool guy, like, it's almost like he's your vassal, is how they felt about it. And was that a problem for any of you, that, like, I'm supposed to, that, because Kamaria mentioned it, I'm the outsider, but they let me in.
you got blessed by the Pope.
Right.
He didn't lose any
it makes
status
sense.
or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it adds to that roller coaster of emotion too. Like, oh, what's gonna happen? I got blessed. Yeah. No, I'm back in hell.
Yeah, that's a good line, and maybe that will explain it. It was an interesting thing of my time in that school. He was considered cool, and at some point he had decided that I was one of his people, and he even throughout high school, if anybody gave me trouble, he just, like, would magically appear and be like, you don't fuck with Boyd. And it was just like, why? And everybody would just be like, I don't understand. Why not? Why is he protected? And I don't know.
Because you were really one of the cool kids, but you're an outsider cool kid.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is part of it, right? He had a similar worldview about the hierarchy of things. That he knew who it was, and he was a little resentful when people got the nod that he didn't think they should get the nod.
I'm just co-signing on the idea of the roller coaster. Like Noah said, you set it up so that, okay, normally this is a challenge navigating the cafeteria, but you pack your lunch. All right, case closed. Wait, what? The tables are what? And so like that too. You get the blessing, and then Shank is over here trying to ruin it for everybody.
All right. Thank you so much. We're running long. I would like to offer it up. Does anybody have the tenacity to do a whatchamacallit? To do our signature ending and tell one of these stories as their own, with their own voice. I'm going to nudge Susan.
And you're nudging me to tell which story?
You can do either one. You can also
You got to
say
do
no.
Dan's. You got to do Dan's because you knew him at that time.
I don't.
You can say no. You
Okay.
can push it to somebody else.
Yeah, I don't think I can do that story as much justice as you do it. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's
So-
so you be a kingmaker. Whoever you say Susan has to do it. And they can choose either story.
Right. Noah, it's you.
I guess what's fair is fair. Okay. So, as anyone who's ever been to school or even just amongst a group of people knows that invariably there is a hierarchy. And when I was in 6th grade, I was obsessed with a hierarchy. I knew I was a cool kid, but I also knew that other people had different opinions. And the place where the hierarchy was most evident to me was the lunchroom. And because I was the coolest kid, I figured out how to sidestep the hierarchy, and I just packed my lunch, and I was relegated to the Packers side of the cafeteria, where I could sort of preside over the whole lunchroom, at least in my own mind, and judge and study and document the social order of the school I went to. And it was a brilliant plan, and it worked flawlessly until the school decided to rearrange the cafeteria to do some maintenance. And everyone was piled into my side of the lunchroom. But because I was a cool kid and I'm quick on my feet, I knew what I had to do. I had to assert myself, claim my spot, and I chose to sit next to the second coolest kid, or across from the second coolest kid, Joe Harvey. And I wasn't wrong. It worked. I got challenged. But I got the nod from the Prince Regent, and the whole social order was upended that day. So things were completely crazy, and who happened to? Can I get it? Dan, can you give me all the names of the actors here?
Shank and Tiffany.
Shank, Tiffany. Okay, that's who matters.
Yeah.
So Shank is to the left of me. And Tiffany, the coolest girl in the school and secretly the love of my life, is to my right. And my friend Shank, the class clown, the traitor, does not miss the opportunity to embarrass me. And he says, Dan, what a crazy day. The love of your life, Tiffany Laser, is sitting to your right. This must be the happiest day of your life. You must be elated. I think, and I think the whole court agrees with me, that you should take this opportunity and plant a wet one on beautiful Tiffany. And everyone backs Shank up on this one. And I'm desperately trying to figure out how to diffuse the situation. And I put my arm around Tiffany and I say, listen, we're not kissing friends. We're more genteel hugging friends. Isn't that right, Tiffany? And she says, Daniel Andrew Boyd, you have just grabbed my boob. What do you have to say for yourself? And Shank stands up, makes a trumpeting noise, and proclaims that Daniel Boyd is the coolest kid in class because he has just lost his virginity. And he wants to tell everyone what it feels like to touch a boob. And that's where I'm gonna end it.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. There's a lot good in there. The whole social order disrupted, pandemonium all over the place. I think I'm gonna steal that. And then also it made me think about that idea of one of the techniques that you can do to get hyperbole in is to go to your imagination inside your mind. And then I imagined this, right? And there's some room for that here, as like they're like, you should kiss, and my imagination goes, oh my god, what are they gonna ask for the next? And then what are they gonna, these people never give me any rest. Thank you everyone so much for showing up, and we will see you next week, Monday. I am gonna take the 2 seconds to see if I can make it happen. We have recently started a Discord, and you are welcome and encouraged to join it if you want to hang out and geek out regarding stories. Invite people. This is going to be so easy. Copy. There's the Discord link. Throw it where it is. Can I get a comment here? Into the 3 places we're streaming. Does anyone else have anything? Can we all wave and say goodbye and have a cacophony of hand waving? I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream, and we can talk and chat a little